Welcome to the 5-Year You podcast, a show dedicated to helping you become the best version of yourself one day at a time. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Kat, and we promise to keep it raw, real, and relatable.
Are you ready to grow? Hey, 5 Tribe. Today's episode is about breaking the cycle, and it's all about changing patterns in your life that you don't want anymore. How are you doing today, Kat?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm good. I like this topic. We are really big. Yeah, we're really big at 5-Year You about creating new habits, breaking old cycles that we might be doing that we're not aware of, that are causing us to feel stuck in our lives and often trapped and not knowing how to move forward. So this episode always really hits home for me. It's something I think about on the daily. I'm constantly watching these microcycles and habits, and I just love this stuff. I can nerd out about this for days. So
cool. Well, I'm glad we're doing it today. We were talking before we hit record about how there are so many ways to view this, because we all get into like repetitive cycles. That's what habits are, right? And some of them are good and some of them are not good for us. I think relationships can get sort of stuck in patterns and cycles. And we can talk about it on like a small level, like, the microcycles, like you said. But there's also really big cycles that you can improve upon, such as generational cycles. And so people who are maybe the first person in their family to become a millionaire, or the first person to, immigrate to North America, go to college, whatever, is like those are kind of breaking long held family cycles as well. And those are very big shifts. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. And the purpose of this call is to chat about how to break the cycles that aren't serving us.
that's right. So breaking any kind of habit requires you to first have awareness of it. We have a lot of habits going on. 95% of our thoughts are subconscious. They're just things that we've learned and we do on repeat. So you might have a subconscious belief that every time you see a yellow light, you accelerate to try to beat the light. And you might not even be aware you're doing this. So until you have that awareness that, this might be dangerous and this probably isn't the best driving way, you're not going to be able to break it. You have no awareness. It's just a thing you do. And I think a lot of us have that. And that's really where we excel with our coaching, is to kind of talk with people and see where these habits are and bring awareness to it. That's the first step. So what would you say, like when you're trying to bring awareness into your day-to-day life, Kat? What have you done? What would you suggest people to do?
I love the word curiosity. I love to encourage our coaching clients to come at their decisions with curiosity. It's just another way to say of bringing awareness, but ask yourself why you do the things that you do. Because like Andrew said, so many of these things are subconscious. So one of the things we love helping our coaching clients with are any issues surrounding their finances. Andrew's a CPA. I'm the author of a money book. And so we love talking about money mindset. And a good example of that, of a cycle, is, let's say you're just constantly in the cycle, the paycheck to paycheck cycle. You're in this like cycle of like feeling broke. And we just spoke with a coaching client who said, I'm bad with money. My mom was bad with money. My dad was bad with money. They're bad in different ways. So a lot of times we absorb our parents' bad cycles too. And, he says, the second I got money, I spent it. And so if you were to come at that with awareness and curiosity, it would be like, why am I at the store right now? Why do I want to buy this thing? How do I think I'm going to feel after I buy this thing? How do I think I'm going to feel a week after buying this thing? Is this thing necessary for my happiness, or is this going to be just a temporary dopamine hit? Did I have a bad day at work and it made me want to go to the mall and pick up whatever, a sweater? What led me to this decision? And once you start having curiosity about why you do what you do, the pattern emerges.
Yeah, and I love that. I really have to make the bad dad joke of you saying curiosity and cat, curiosity killed cat, and satisfaction brought it back. Anyway, I just had to come out.
Wow.
It was stuck there. I'm so sorry. I cannot
Well,
help
we all
myself.
benefited, so
Thank you for acknowledging the bad dad joke. I will move on. I think when you're being curious about, I love that. I love it kind of almost being outside of yourself and going, look at Andrew doing what he's doing right now. Why is he doing that? And it's so kind of playful rather than this critical of like, why are you doing this stupid
yeah.
thing you're doing, Andrew? You know,
I
it's
think that
very
sometimes that
playful.
self-awareness feels like, oh, I'm in therapy and I've got to observe myself. And curiosity is more, it has a more of a fun feeling to it. It's just like, huh, interesting doing
Yeah.
that thing, you know?
I think I've been going back through Joe Dispenza's work, who he wrote Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Fantastic book for anybody who's really wanting to understand change and why you do the things you do. But because 95% of what we are doing is unconscious, subconscious, our body is often dictating how our mind does things. So you might be bored. And when you were bored, maybe your parents told you to go outside and play and there wasn't anybody to play with. So you went, I don't know, you went and threw rocks in the river. So suddenly you can find yourself sitting at home going like, I really want to throw a rock at something. And you don't know. And it's just because you're bored, because 5-year-old you got the idea of this is how I alleviate boredom. And you just never thought about it before. So when you come at it with curiosity, it's kind of going like, I wonder why I'm the way I am, rather than I'm broken and need to be fixed, which is much more of a therapeutic kind of approach to it. But just kind of being curious, it's like, why do I always tap my sugar twice before I put it in the coffee cup? Why do I do this? And just kind of, it's almost like you're getting to meet yourself from an outsider's perspective. And it's kind of interesting, some of the stuff that you do, but that curiosity does keep it very playful. And I
It
really love that
does.
approach to it.
Yeah, coming at it with curiosity, coming at it with the goal of healing and creating a better life for yourself. That's why we call this podcast 5-Year You. We're talking about all of the different ways that we can become the best, healthiest, and happiest version of ourselves. Another cycle that I see often is people repetitively dating the same type of person. They're drawn to the same type of person. So obviously I have like the female perspective and, information from friends. And so maybe they always date a certain type and it always ends badly. But you can go and observe your patterns and you can say, wow, I keep dating this person. You're unconsciously attracted to someone who, let's say, is flaky. And let's say that you couldn't rely on your parents as a child. And that's probably why you're being drawn to the familiar and your mind is trying to repair and fix painful things from your childhood where you felt like you couldn't rely on your parents. So as an adult, you recognize these same characteristics, these same patterns. An adult you is trying to prove that you're worthy and valuable and deserve, to have someone stay for you. But really, what you really need is somebody who is dependable, calls when they say they're going to call. But to someone who is used to very toxic cycles, a very steady, calm person might feel boring, or you might not feel the spark that people are looking for or whatever. And you have to recognize in yourself that not all sparks are good, and that it's important to retrain yourself and break that cycle. Maybe go on some dates with people you wouldn't normally pick, or who maybe you're not instantly drawn to. You have to kind of recognize these things about yourself. If you want a different result, you have to take different actions and have curiosity about it. I didn't mean to leave like the fun rock throwing thing for a more serious thing, but these are the type of cycles that your partner can absolutely change the direction of your life. And so these are important things to recognize when you might be kind of stuck in a bad pattern.
I think I agree. I think when we are looking at relationships in particular, we tend to repeat a cycle for whatever reason. And you will hear your friend say it all the time, like, oh, I just can't get a nice guy. Everybody I date is a jerk, or,
Yeah.
everybody's a musician or anything else. And it's kind of funny because from the outside, you look at your friend and you go, oh, well, you see it. And
Yeah.
they're saying it. And they're saying
Yeah.
it over and over and over again, but they don't have that awareness yet. And sometimes we can help our friends with awareness. But again, a lot of times we will repeat the same statements over and over again and wonder why it is, because we've never actually become aware and got curious as to why.
You have to
And
heal the parts of yourself that the original cycle hurt in order to break it.
yeah, I agree. Or, giving yourself permission to move beyond that is another part. But again, that kind of leads us into the next step, which is, once you're aware of something, it's no longer a habit. It's a choice,
Ah,
because you
ooh.
are, yeah. And that hit me hard the first time I heard, I think it was Daryl Anka that said that, but it's like very, very important that you recognize, okay, I am purposely choosing the wrong kind of person for me. What am I going to do about it? And so you need to interrupt that pattern. You need to go find that person who treats you kindly,
Mm-hmm.
or you need to find that person who's actually interested in the things that you're interested in, or you need to take time to work on yourself, but you need to interrupt. The next step of change is interrupting the pattern. It's breaking the pattern, breaking the
Right.
habit. And you do that in a host of ways. Every way is different. In this relationship kind of way, it would be, maybe taking time to yourself, maybe seeing that, advocating for yourself inside of the relationship. If you're with somebody that you still want to be with and you're like, you know, they don't pay attention to me, well, start making sure they pay attention, start feeling valued enough to be paid attention to, because often that's a self-worth thing.
Right.
In the case of, and this will probably hit people in the gut in more than one way, but like if you're bored at night and you get up and go grab a bag of potato chips, and then, an hour later, a bag of potato chips is gone, that's a cycle. That is a boredom cycle or a self-soothing cycle. And when you see that, you can interrupt it, and you can interrupt it by not bringing the trigger items or the foods into the house or switching to something else, but you need to have a way of interrupting it. So I get bored on the couch, I get up and I go outside. I don't go to the pantry. I don't go to the fridge. I go do something else. You interrupt that pattern. And sometimes it can be really, really minute. And other times it's a really big thing that it takes a little bit of time to identify and continuously interrupt so that your brain doesn't go down that pathway every time.
I love
Um,
that. I love the pantry example. It reminds me of when you and I did a fast it was my first time doing a fast. It wasn't your first time, but we both work from home. And the first day that I fasted ever my whole life, I realized how many times I wanted to go to the pantry. I was using snacking as like my little procrastination friend from work. And it's like I was noticing that when I would sit down to write, I'd write a few sentences and then I'd instantly want to go up and get a little snacky. And I was like, I cannot believe how many times I wanted to eat today. And it wasn't because of the fast. I just noticed that I was just doing this unconscious thing of like, I don't even think I was hungry. I literally think it was just to give me a break from work, even if I had just started working on something. It's amazing to get that awareness.
it really is. And yeah, and there's a good example of doing something different that
Yeah,
interrupts your pattern, right? You didn't sit down and go, okay, I'm going to interrupt my snacking habit. You became aware of it after you had interrupted it. So
that's right.
sometimes interrupting one thing can disturb other things. And that's a good process, because you start to realize just how many ingrained habits we have
Yep.
going on a daily basis. And, we have conversation habits, we have patterns. It's like
Mm-hmm.
we are habit forming creatures. So we know that, and we get to play with that now. That's kind of the lesson of this episode, is that just because you've had a habit your whole life and you don't like it, as soon as you bring awareness to it, it's a choice. As soon as you can choose, you can interrupt it. And once you interrupt it, you can start finding ways to break that cycle. Then you get to reprogram yourself. You get to take that step of going, now how do I want to be? And interruption and reprogramming kind of they can go very, very quickly together. Um, and this is the AIR method. There's a lot of change, like there's atomic habits, tiny habits. I'm taking this from the secret language of the body, where your body is really more telling you the things to do. And I think that's one that is really good to pay attention to, because that boredom thing of sitting on the couch, I think, hits a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm bored. I don't know what to watch. I'll go distract myself with food. So the reprogramming part can be really different, because in your case, Kat, how was the reprogramming of not being able to go grab something while you're fasting? How did it
Oh,
feel?
it was tough, but it was good. I think that up until that point, we had made so many changes into, which we've talked about many times on the show, into our eating habits and whatever, and it kind of revealed to me, um, like that something needed to change. And so I definitely, try to sit down. I use the Pomodoro timer to sit for like 25 minutes at a time. Like I noticed the pull. It's like something outside of me is like, like them putting the cane on the stage and pulling someone off the stage. It feels like that. It feels like when I start to work, someone is just like pulling me that way, because my brain is like, I don't want to do this work right now, but I have to. And so it's really helped in terms of like kind of reestablishing the discipline and the boundaries of working at home, which is awesome. We both love working from home, but you got to have the boundaries set up. Otherwise, you'll just clean all day and not get any work. So,
Yeah, I agree. I think the reprogramming part, it needs to be very, very intentional as
mm-hmm.
you're moving into it, and that can be a challenge in the beginning, because there's part of you uh, that wants to stay the same, and the
Because it's
way
familiar.
yeah, the way I think I used this on a show like a year ago, but I'll use it again. If you think of yourself standing in like a really high field of grass, and every day you go back and forth to McDonald's, let's say, or a fast food chain, and you go back and forth and back and forth, and this is just what you do, that pathway in your mind is going to get beaten down and very easy to get across. In fact, the more you do it on a daily basis, and this can be with any habit, it doesn't have to be with food, you're creating this neural pathway in your brain. And after a certain amount of time, your brain's just going to go do it. It's just how we're programmed. So when you become intentional about your changing, about transformation, about who you actually want to be, your 5-year self, you've got to look in that field and go, okay, I'm actually going to choose the opposite direction. And the first time you do that opposite direction, if you haven't felt uncomfortable before in your life, get ready, because you are going to feel really, really uncomfortable, because everything in your body is saying, no, we go the other way. We go in the path that we know,
Right.
but you're going to go do this path. So you're going to go, let's just keep using the food example. You're going to go grab an apple, and you come back, and that pathway gets beaten down, but the grass is high, it's cutting your legs, it's itchy, doesn't feel really good, but you do it. And then you go do it another time, and it's not as hard as a second time. And you do it a third time, a fourth time, a fifth time, a sixth time. And eventually, I think from what I've been learning, like it takes like 62 days, somewhere around there, and for this neural pathway to really like just kind of explode and like get, not finalized, but like firmed up.
Cemented. Yeah.
Yeah. Cemented. Yeah. And as you do that, the other pathway, the old pathway, the fast food pathway, starts to grow in. It's still going to be there.
Sure.
But you make that point of going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth on the new pathway. And eventually you'll be sitting there on the couch and you'll go, I'm hungry. It's supper time. Oh, I'm going to go grab an apple, rather than I'm going to go get fast food. And that's the balance. And you can do that with it. It literally applies for your beliefs. It applies for your feelings, your thought patterns, your relationships. All these things come from, you need to create that new neural pathway in your brain. And it takes it one day at a time. But I honestly found, when somebody told me it was like 62 days, it's like 3 weeks of 21. And the first week of 21 days, it barely looks like anything. The second set of 21 days, you start to see, it starts to feel a little more natural. But at the 62-day mark, it's like the construction company comes in and goes, all right, we are building a road to this place. We are definitely doing this. And And you kind of look at it and you're like, wow, this is it. It took, and it's been really, really cool doing that. It's also nice to know that it's like, okay, it's just a couple of months of doing this, and it'll be okay. And looking back on it, you and I have done this with so many things, like, from eating bad foods to better foods to not buying the stuff, like, to just how we treat each other in conversations. Like, we've brought so much awareness into things and being like, okay, this is how we are. This is not how we want to be. Let's change this. Okay. And we interrupt that pattern. Then we bring in the reprogramming. It's something you can do in any aspect of your life, I think.
No, I absolutely love that. And yeah, like if you're in a bad pattern, people talk about yo-yo dieting. Why is it that I can lose weight and I go right back? Well, it might be because the pattern hasn't cemented. And one of the things we're very much into being kind and gentle to yourself. One thing that we always say is that you can just make a new choice tomorrow. Even if you fell off the wagon, even if you had like 3 pizzas on your own this weekend, no judgment. I was going to say been there, but I don't know if I've had 3 pizzas, I might vomit. But Andrew, but you can make a new choice. You could like get back on the path anytime. And those pattern interrupters are great. Like Andrew said, like if we're having a conversation and we notice like, one of us gets heightened or something, our pattern interrupter is that we say toast. Because when you have toast in the toaster, if it's burning, you're like, toast. So for us, a lot of times, you don't realize, meaning you listener might not realize when maybe you're getting a different tone or you're getting snippy or you're just kind of getting passionate about your topic. When that happens and one of us says, I think I smell toast, it's a little indicator for us to like flip the self-awareness switch, be like, oh, I didn't know I was getting sassy there, or I didn't know my little tired was coming out, I'm a little cranky or whatever. And then you can be a little bit more thoughtful about like how you say things and how you want to be. So that is an example of a really easy pattern disruptor that can take a conversation from derailing and being really upsetting to one that's just like a healthy conversation, even if it's a challenging one, just much healthier and respectful.
Yeah, it's a really good idea to have those keywords or like those little triggers. A lot of times when we are triggered, we're not aware of it. You need to have that person on the outside that is, because that awareness hasn't sunk in yet. So somebody might be pointing out to you, do you know that you're doing this? And you might go, what are you talking about? I don't understand what you mean. And then you hear it again and again, and then eventually it brings in awareness. That can be very dangerous because that person may not want to change. So I don't necessarily recommend doing that. This is always more about self-awareness and setting good examples. But when it comes to us and what we do, it really is knowing that we get triggered and that those triggers aren't happening in our brains typically, they're happening in our bodies. And something that can happen to all of us is if you get a trigger from something from childhood, like something really, really silly.
Can you give an
like
example? Because I think, not to interrupt, but I feel like
no, for sure.
If we hear like I'm triggered in like casual conversation, but in many ways, a trigger is sort of like the ultimate stuck pattern and one of the hardest to break. So could you define like what a trigger is and give that example like from childhood?
Absolutely. So what happens when you get triggered is in your childhood, let's say something happens to you on a regular basis. Like you used to come home from school and you would have a certain meal. Maybe mom or dad had a bad day or they were really busy and they were grumpy. So they would make you that same meal every time. And let's just say it was like breakfast or supper. And every time, because, mom would make you supper, she was really preoccupied, the toast would get burnt. And so you have that kind of recollection of burnt toast in your head. And then you'd sit down for supper and, you'd kind of start to, as this happened over and over again, you'd start to feel uneasy. And every time in the middle of supper, your parents would fight and you would feel really uncomfortable and tight in your chest. and you would get really worried, and then you would go to your room and just kind of hide in your room the rest of the night because you didn't want to hear your parents fight. So what happens in our bodies is that we start to trigger an event to a feeling, and we have certain thoughts around it. And then our thoughts kind of trigger those feelings, and they kind of create this loop. So what happens, first of all, in our bodies is that we have this sensation. So we might be walking by a restaurant and we smell burnt toast. And suddenly we are right back at that dinner table with our parents fighting, and we feel afraid. We have that tightness in our chest. And the only thing we want to do is run and hide. We don't know why. We're not sure why it's doing it, but it is. And then we forget about the burnt toast part. And we just know whenever we hear a fight or an argument, we feel tight in our chest and we want to run. And suddenly, as time goes on, we are getting triggered by this and we don't know. And suddenly we're very avoidant in our confrontations with people. Whenever somebody's fighting, we just want to run away. And we don't know that we're being triggered until one day we go, I never noticed that whenever I hear somebody fighting or arguing or even raising their voice, I go to the next room. I can't even be in the same room as somebody who's arguing. And you start to go, geez, I'm being triggered. And what might happen is you might actually smell toast one day and you're like, and then it all kind of, the awareness comes in. And when you have that awareness, then you can start to go, okay, I am being triggered right now by this feeling in my body. And that feeling is being brought out by maybe a smell, a sound, feeling. And that feeling in my body is telling my brain, go hide, because it is uncomfortable. And so in that, we have to be able to bring that awareness and then interrupt that and go, okay, I'm not 5 years old at the dinner table anymore. Mom and dad aren't here. I'm actually safe. You need to start reprogramming your body. And there's a lot of ways to do that. But our body is often telling us stuff from the past that we're not even aware of until we tune into it and start bringing awareness around it. Hope that made sense.
It did. I think that's a really good example. And it maybe people listening are like, like maybe that's why I feel so avoidant during a hard conversation with my spouse, or, why I feel this kind of way in this other situation. So our hope with this episode is to let you know that all of us are stuck in patterns we might not like. Some are small and some are really deep within the fibers of our family and culture and upbringing. But all of them can teach us something. And that with more awareness and curiosity, you can begin to notice when your triggers happen, when the patterns are sort of taking over. And by stopping them and by having a disruptor come in, you can start to begin to take the steps to overcome those things. And I'm sure we'll talk about this more. This is a topic that we're really interested in, and we're constantly helping each other recognize these things within each other. And it's really amazing to walk through life with a lot more curiosity and awareness. And I hope this has been helpful to you.
Yeah. So to sum up, get curious about yourself. Become aware of the things that you're doing. If you are wondering if there's something about yourself you don't like, just become curious and see why you do it. And then start to notice those patterns that are emerging. Notice if there's a trigger. Notice if it's a feeling in your head, something somebody says. I don't know why this came up. A really good example of a trigger, if you've ever seen Back to the Future, is when, Marty McFly gets called a chicken. Like that kind of just, in the second Back to the Future, he forgets everything and has to fight the guy, right? But pay attention to those things, because when you're aware of them, you can interrupt them. And when you can interrupt them, you can reprogram them. And give yourself a few months of consistent reprogramming. You are going to be amazed how far and how fast you go when you allow yourself the joy of change.
I love that. All right. Well, we end every episode with glimmers. These are things that have made us happy, and we just feel like sharing with you so that we always end on a positive note. So, Andrew, do you have a sparkly glimmer to share for today?
I do. I got a puzzle table because I am that big of a nerd, and I love myself for that. And I really loved doing puzzles as a kid, but I just kind of fell away from it. And it's kind of been one of my new self-care things. But it's really nice. It covers up. It goes under the couch or bed or whatever. So it's not like out there all the time. And it's got little trays. It raises and falls down. It makes me happy and shiny on the inside.
I like it. I like your nerdiness. I'm here for the puzzle table.
Thank you. How about you?
Mine is like a literal glimmer because I am in Chicago and we have had a couple little warm days, little cute warm days where you don't need a full down coat that goes down to your ankles, and like the sun has been out. Like it's not summer or spring by any means, but I sense it taking a turn, and that fills me with joy. Yes.
I love that. I've been feeling that too. It's nice when the weather starts to finally stop being winter.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Hey guys, quick disclaimer. We're podcasters on the internet. If you need to seek professional help, please go see your healthcare professional.